We're live. Welcome to anyone that watched last week's ADHD Unplugged. This is our second one, and I'm joined today by You Have Adhd, and we're going to be talking about ADHD in relationships, but we're going to focus obviously on being women with ADHD and how that impacts relationships for us. So, Jo, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, as Annalise said, I'm You Have Adhd, and I used to run ADHD Surrey, but we closed last August. So I then trained to be an ADHD coach, and that's what I'm doing now.
Lovely. So I think we haven't really got an idea of where we're going to go with this chat today. I think we're just going to let it evolve naturally. But there was something that I wanted to sort of start it with. Was I was doing a bit of research last night and looking at ADHD and relationships and the impacts of that. And I found that most articles or most sort of advice were based on men with ADHD and how that impacts their partner, which again, I found a little bit unfair. There are lots of misconceptions and they were definitely more related to male traits and behaviours. How do you feel about that, Jo?
Bit sexist, bit gender bias again. It is a lot of the relationship stuff is centered around the husband that has ADHD, not the woman. But also, I think it also comes across quite detrimental, really. Like, we go into relationships and just cause chaos and trouble, and that's not how it is. I think if you know, the key to any relationship, you have to know your worth and your values and have really strong boundaries in place. I mean, I've had to learn the hard way. But yeah, you've got to know your worth.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think what you said was quite important as well. A lot of the information that I found when I was researching it was all very negative. It was all very much based on what people with ADHD can't do. And it was almost like this victim scenario that whoever we're in a relationship with is going to suffer immensely because we have ADHD. And I don't think that that's necessarily a true reflection. There are a lot of positive traits to being ADHD in a relationship. I think one thing is, you know, if you look at hyper focus, if we are interested in someone, we give our all. And I've said this before, I think we invest a lot more. And maybe that's to do with our impulsivity. It might also be to do with that emotional feeling that you get, like, you know, you like the feeling of being in love. So it creates the dopamine and then you want to continue and always feel like that.
Yeah.
That's not always bad. I mean, sometimes it is. But I feel like we get a really bad reputation in relationships. And we're probably, you know, the most loyal people to be in relationships with anyway.
Oh, absolutely. I think we are loyal, be that a friendship, a relationship, situationship, whatever ship you want to be in. You know, we are loyal and we do contribute to that relationship. And I think the other thing I just thought of was when you said about like Googling relationships and it's about men and blah, blah, blah. Is it all about men with ADHD because we're seen as women? So women bring up children, they do the shopping, they pack for holidays, they do the housework. Is that why it's not being spoken about?
That's really interesting, actually. Yeah, because we have that. We're the carers, aren't we?
Yeah.
That sort of traditional view, and I think still so much of that exists. I found lots of articles about unreliability. You know, with whether it be timekeeping, whether it be, you know, not emotionally available as well, which that does not resonate with me. You know, I think if anything, and we've spoken about this, Jo, many times, I'm an oversharer. So I'm almost over emotional in certain situations. I know
like
we've gone back
a whole life story.
Exactly. That's it. So if anything, I would say that we are probably the more vulnerable people in those situations. That's my personal experience. The other thing as well is it's individual for everyone, isn't it? Your ADHD is different. I mean, I am mainly hyperactive, so I've been told. You combined?
I'm severe combined, yeah.
See,
So
exactly.
I can literally, like, well, I remember when the kids were little and, you know, like babies, and used to let them cry out, go to sleep. I would be able to just switch off. Can't hear the baby screaming. I know the baby's okay. Obviously, I'm not neglecting it.
Yeah.
But yeah, and my ex-husband used to be like, can you not hear the child? Yeah. Can you? But I think where we just have that ability just to zone out, everything disappears, and we can just sit in the middle of a crowded room, do you know what I mean? And just zone out and not be able to hear anything.
I see that as a massive benefit, because I do that quite a lot, and it allows me to be able to deal with situations. So it's quite calming. I mean, I went on a first date a couple of months ago, and I walked into this pub where I was meeting this guy, and it was so loud and busy. And I just thought within the first 3 seconds, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to pay attention at all. But luckily, I think he picked up on that and we moved. But had I have stayed there, I wouldn't have been able to. So I do see where it is, where some of these sort of issues are. But I think being authentic, which is something that we've spoken about many times as well, and being really open is something you need to do. Like, a lot of people don't buy the idea of ADHD. They don't understand how it could impact an adult, or that adults, women particularly, have ADHD, but it does. It impacts you every single day.
Well, with relationships, you know, I think the whole, you know, the rejection sensitivity dysphoria, when you're rejected by someone, I mean, you know my story, a lot of things I can't go into legally, but I have walked away from a 27-year abusive marriage. So coming out the other end, you know, you're full of trauma and God knows what else. Where was I going with this? I can't remember. It's gone.
You'll pick it up. That's something that we do.
Come back.
It will come back to you. I think talking about trauma is really a good point as well, because we've all had negative experiences in relationships, which impacts the way that we have future relationships. So you do take that trauma as well. And that's really difficult, I think, for somebody with ADHD as well, because we tend to not focus on it, but it stays with you, doesn't it? I know trauma is, you know, really hard for a lot of people, but I tend to really focus on those experiences.
Yeah, I think trauma, I think I've just remembered about the rejection sensitivity that we were talking about before. No, but I think trauma comes from rejection as well, because I read a thing the other day. Apparently, if you've been rejected or ghosted, it's the same effect on the brain as it is to be in a high-speed car crash.
Wow.
Or something, yeah. Don't quote me on that, but it was something like that. That's the impact. So can you imagine, like, being a neurotypical person, you could possibly deal with that. With us, with women with ADHD, with the RSD and everything else involved in it, that's going to cause so much trauma for someone ghosting, or whatever you call it. Ignoring
and I think that also feeds into that. I don't know if you do this, but the catastrophizing. So if you're getting ghosted, or you feel like you're being ghosted, then you feel inclined to share how that makes you feel. And before you know it, there's 15 messages. You've changed your emotions 5 times. It's just all too much, isn't it? And it kind of just comes out. I find that really hard.
That's the hardest, because you want to get your point across and you want to explain why you are like you are, but we're not very good at explaining, because we've got to get it out somehow, but we don't get all of it out. And then an hour later, you're like, oh, yeah, I forgot to say this. So then you're on another rant, and then you end up looking like a complete psycho in a WhatsApp chat.
This is so true. This is so true. It's really difficult. And I find it really difficult because I often change my emotions from day to day. So the way that I process a situation, my instant response to it is going to be different to my response the next day, when I've thought about it and overthought about it and done all of that. But then that can change depending on the response that I get. So you're just kind of going on this roller coaster ride of emotions. And also, what we were saying last week about your internal monologue. So my internal monologue is also telling me something else and trying to rationalize it. It can be full on, I guess, if you're on the receiving end of it as well. But then don't ghost us. Simple.
Simple that.
Simple.
Just answer the question. It's not hard.
Just say not interested. Fine. We'll move forward. That's okay. We're very resilient, and that's something that I think comes from having those negative experiences as well.
Yeah, but it's also going back to the whole being authentic. I think where, I've learned a lot about it, and I am an authentic person, and I think we just expectations of others, and I think we just expect people to be authentic as well, and we put a lot of trust in people. We're extremely vulnerable as women anyway, whether you're neurotypical or not, but having ADHD on top of that makes us extremely vulnerable to
it really does
bad relationships.
Yeah, it really, really does. It's it's interesting. And then I find as well that I tend to be attracted to really complicated people. And I think with me,
I'll save you.
Which, I mean, we're also both single parents, so that comes with another sort of set of rules and ideas. I do not want to be saved, or I do not want someone to come in my life that, is going to do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Because I've always felt that in past relationships, prior to my diagnosis, and now obviously I know myself a lot better, that a lot of guys that I did date would think that that's what they were doing. Like, oh, she's a single mom and she's all by herself and blah, blah, blah. But I didn't actually need support with that. What I actually wanted was a productive relationship, but wasn't quite sure, of how I felt or how to get that.
But then I think because we're very loving, we're very authentic and things like that, and people go, oh, well, just let it go.
Oh.
No, I haven't had justice yet. I am not letting this go.
Exactly. I completely get that. I find it so hard to let things go.
Yeah.
And again, it's that whole process of overthinking situations and processing it, because, we are slower processors. It takes us a while to actually maybe that's the wrong way to put it. I think that we have to go through the motions when we're dealing with a particular situation, and that can take a bit of time before you've actually got to, all right, this is my firm stance on it now. However, and I don't know whether you're the same, and I think this is contributed by my ADHD, once we're done with the situation, we are done. So we give and give and give. And I think we kind of have this, I don't know, like there's so many chances and then that's it. So it almost has to die a horrible death before you can be like, no. And that's it. And I've definitely had, like, all relationships that I've had have always been really extreme and emotional at the end, where it's like, I'm never going to speak to that person ever again. I did. Yeah, well, this is it. So it's another misconception, isn't it? I think what I don't like in relationships, being a woman with ADHD, is maybe the appearance, or maybe the idea that we're needy. I mean, we're not needy. We're upfront about what we want.
Yeah, what is that about? Like, why are you so needy? Why are you so emotional? Why are you so... But then that's a reaction. Do you know what I mean? We're reacting to that situation. And I think, especially women with ADHD, I mean, I've had it, obviously being an abusive relationship, had it used against me. Oh, maybe you should stop taking that medication now. You don't need it. Why? Because I'm seeing things for what they are. Do you know what I mean? So you can have it used against you. I think a lot of women do suffer with that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. My cat's just thrown up on my sofa, which is
lovely,
pretty difficult. So excuse me if I'm zoning to the left. Nice, perfect for a live stream. Could you get any more ADHD than this? I think not. Oh, thank you, Jess. Lovely. I will deal with that in a moment. Yeah, I just find it really interesting now, especially being diagnosed as an adult, looking back on some of the experiences that I've had in relationships, and actually knowing that the impact of that because of my ADHD and the way that I responded. So I've been in some really toxic relationships as well. So
yeah,
I mean, I've been single for about 8 years now, so there's reasons for that, and that's because I really wanted to understand myself. But the previous relationship that I was with somebody was just awful, emotionally manipulative. He was awful, and it's that gaslighting thing, you know, where people are able to tell you that it's you all the time. So then you sit there and you think about that, and then you start feeling like you're a bad person, or, you know, you're not responding in the correct way, when really it was emotional abuse. It was an extremely abusive situation. So yeah, I see had that have happened now, I definitely would have responded in a much different way. But yeah, that's what it is.
I think the same, like looking back, I should have seen the signs, but you know, I got with my ex when so I was just reading comments. Yeah, so I got with him when I was 18 and hadn't really been in a serious relationship. Yeah, and then didn't recognize the red flags, didn't recognize the gaslighting, the love bombing, the everything else that goes with it. Just didn't recognize it. And I do feel, especially young girls with ADHD, they should be taught these things to know their worth and recognize red flags.
Yeah, I find, again, reflecting on past relationships, completely missed all those red flags. But I think it's because maybe if you don't feel like you're in the greatest emotional state, that you give people a little bit more freedom, or you make more allowances, which
We're
isn't
people pleasers. That's what we do. We like to please people. We don't like, you know, that's the whole thing. We don't like confrontation.
Which is really ironic because we're really good at it.
Love a bit of confrontation.
Yeah, it is funny. But again, it's not necessarily confrontational. It's just saying what you think. And I think when you're an adult and you're diagnosed with ADHD and you do all this sort of soul searching and understand yourself and your behavior, it's so much easier and cleaner just to be like, this is how I feel. This is what I want. You know, this is why what you've said isn't okay.
Exactly.
And some people just can't deal with that.
No.
So if you go on a date now, would you disclose that you have ADHD from the beginning?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really important. And I think that if someone is genuinely interested, then they would do their own sort of research on that as well.
But then you can get that. You can get, you know, you do tell someone, they go, oh, yeah, maybe I need to look into that and why you do certain things and then blah, blah, blah. But they can still turn it around and throw it in your face.
Yeah, I think that's always going to be the risk, though, isn't it? Because it's so poorly understood still. We're still looking at this model with this 8-year-old boy in a classroom who's, you know, doing something, pushing other kids over, antisocial, and who don't actually think about the impacts on things like our executive functions, our emotional regulation. These are bigger issues. They're just external sort of features that can happen as a consequence of not having your needs met, so to speak. That's
really important. You saying about having your needs met, you have to have your needs met. And, you know, I didn't know anything about this until I started to be a life coach last year before. What year were you?
Last 2 years.
Last year, doing a needs assessment. And they, you know, my tutor was like, yeah, I'm going to come back and talk about the needs assessment next week, send the assessments in. And then he emailed me and said, I really need to speak to you before class. Why have I done it wrong? No, but we need to have a conversation. And like, yeah, I spoke to him and he said, none of your needs are being met at home.
Oh, wow.
And that's shocking. Emotional, physical, mental, nothing is being met. And that just, I think that was probably, I knew the marriage had ended years ago anyway, but that was like the golden light. like, wow, this is extremely toxic. This is coercive control. It's abuse. It's emotional. It's mental. Not only on me, but on my kids.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so important.
Yeah, that's so important. You have to have your needs met, and you have to say what you, like you just said, say what you want in a relationship. Because if that person isn't willing to meet you in the middle, what's the point?
Yeah, that's it. That's it at the end of the day, isn't it? What is the point?
Yeah, you should be able to say what you want in a relationship. I want trust. I want honesty. I want, authenticity. I want my needs met. That's what I want in this relationship.
And again, going back to the sort of articles I was reading last night, there was something that kept, again, it was very sort of male orientated, but something that kept flagging up was about cheating. Just, but constantly. And I know that there are some people with ADHD that might be sort of what's it called? Hypersexuality? Where, so it's basically like, you do risky things in terms of relationships because you're, again, searching for that feeling, that dopamine, that hit. But I don't think that's a true reflection. I think that's a really narrow idea of looking at ADHD in relationships. Because if I am content in a relationship, then I don't feel that you would look at, that's too much effort. I mean, I find it hard just to do the day-to-day things. Do you know what I mean, though? I'm not being funny, but it's just like, why would I put all this effort in with one person and then just because I fancy it, go off with someone else? Like, what? There's no point. It's
no. I mean, since
coming up though.
Yeah, but since I've been a single parent, I mean, it's been nearly a year. My friend decided to put me on Tinder.
Oh. Oh.
No, woke up to 78 messages. I would say 85% of them were, there was a few, don't know if I can say it on there, pics. It's like, no, mate, really?
Oh,
why would you do that?
It's just, why?
No. I just, you can't have that much value in yourself. You can't respect yourself enough if you're going to start sending women blank pics. Do you know what I mean? You just
blank pics.
Why would you?
No, you're so right. I don't know many women that would enjoy receiving that. I mean, that is definitely not something that I would engage with because it's just creepy, really.
Yeah, but I think maybe it's an idea that someone needs to develop a neurodiversity dating app.
Oh my gosh, that would be amazing.
Now I've just put my idea out there.
Yeah.
Because, I've been on 2 of them now and they're so, especially Tinder is so overwhelming. It's ridiculous. And going to meet someone that you've met online, that's not normal to me. That's not, I don't know, just give me anxiety. But just the messages and the likes and the forcefulness of it.
Yeah, I completely get what you're saying. I've been on some of those dating sites and I don't last very long because it's too overwhelming. And then it's also, you start a conversation with someone and then another message comes up. It's like too many things to do. You can't really establish a connection with somebody, I don't think. It's really difficult.
But messages you can't anyway. I think, especially with ADHD, I misinterpret messages. I'm terrible at it. I will take the wrong end of the message, turn it around, make it into something it's not, and cause absolute chaos. And then it's like, no, well, I didn't mean it like that. And then I go back to read the message and go, oh, okay.
Yeah, I do that all the time. I think it's really hard to text anyway because of the context. You don't understand the context in it, so you can pretty much read whatever you want out of it. but then people don't really like to talk on the phone anymore, or it's all very it's not very neurodiverse friendly.
No, that could be my next venture.
Yeah, do it, please, honestly.
Yeah. But yeah, I think things like Tinder and that, mate, we're vulnerable anyway, but you have to show vulnerability when you go into a dating app, because you're not going to lie. Well, people do, because the messages I got, oh my God. But yeah, you have to show vulnerability. And then when you do show that, 9 times out of 10, it's going to go wrong. And then you have to show shame and guilt, and you're just back to square one again. You just think, well, what's the point?
And I find it really hard to be vulnerable, be considered a vulnerable person, especially in relationships. It irks me to be like that. If you've had a situation and I don't know what it is, whether that's the resilience that I've built up over time, but it makes me so uncomfortable, and I like to show my strength. So when I am vulnerable and that doesn't, go well, or I feel like that maybe that's abused, that just reinforces those barriers that you have up, because you're protecting yourself. So it's like a cycle. So you just go round and round.
I think we protect ourselves anyway from shame and guilt. We've got our guard up anyway in regards to that. So when it comes to going into a new relationship or situationship or whatever ship you're going to be in this week, it's hard. It's crap.
Yeah, dating's not fun.
It's not.
And do you know what also really bothers me is that there's this, I said this to you earlier on, like there's these unwritten rules, these social rules about dating and stuff like that. There's all these grey areas that I just don't get. So what, you date someone for a certain period and then at some point it turns into a relationship. But then
I know exclusive, you've got to go through exclusive first, whatever that means.
When does that happen?
I don't know. But like my older kids are like 26 and 24. It's like, oh yeah, we're exclusive now.
So what were you doing before? I don't understand.
What were you doing before? And then you go into it. So if you're exclusive, apparently so when you first get together, you can see other people.
Okay. But then that's what I don't understand. When are you actually together? Because is that the dating stage?
No, but then so you can see other people, and then if you really sort of get on or whatever, then you're becoming exclusive. And then that goes on for a period of time, and then you actually go into a relationship. It's like, what?
This is all just very complicated.
It's too much.
Could it not just be like, you know what, I really like you, you like me, let's just see how it goes. That's it. None of this. I don't need these little subcategories. No. I find it hard enough making sure I've got my bank card and my keys on me before I leave the house.
Or remembering the pin to the bank card would help.
What did you say? The pin? Oh, yes. It's another story. But you know what I mean, though? It's like there's far too many barriers and rules and whatever else. And then it depends what age group you're in, because there's certain ways of looking at it. Like, I actually feel so bad for younger people now, because...
Oh, absolutely.
I don't think there's really a dating sort of thing going on.
No, there's not. And it's so many of these young girls, and no offense to anyone who's watching who is a young girl, but they're psychos. And I think they are. I'm not being funny. Like, every girlfriend my eldest son has had is psycho. Do you know, they just switch. And I think it's learnt behaviour from social media.
Right, yeah. Social media.
A lot of it comes from social media. Like, I'm on TikTok and whatever, and you see things like, oh yeah, you got to do that, you got to be a psycho. What do you know how detrimental, the story of my eldest son, how detrimental that is on someone's mental health. Like, he tried to commit suicide 3 times in 4 days, threw himself in front of a car just to try and escape from this psycho. She's a psychopath. The police even called her that. She's a psychopath.
It's so unhealthy. Yeah, there's a lot of unhealthy relationships. If you can even call them relationships. But I think you're right, that sort of social media presence as well, you know, there's so much pressure on, and you know, I'm not disregarding men with ADHD at all. It's just this is a forum for talking about being a woman with ADHD. And I think that when you are vulnerable in that sense, you would, well, some people idolize these influencers and stuff like that. So it's about your image, it's about how you should be. I'm also on TikTok, and what I've realized is exactly what you were saying. There's so many weird relationship sort of TikToks, which are like, oh, you need to do this and you need to do that, who are just randoms from anywhere. There's no basis on it, but it's not healthy, you know? And I wish that we could go into relationships and just be really transparent and clear about where that is and where the direction's going. But that never seems to be the case. I don't know. Maybe
that's going back to what we were talking about before, like setting, you know, intentions are so important, especially with a woman with ADHD. You want to know what a man's intention is, because you want to let that guard down and you want to be loved, but you can't because they're not telling you what the intention is.
Yeah, and I think maybe it's about the type of men that we attract as well. I don't mean generally now. I'm just, you know.
Yeah, now, Annalise, now.
No, it's just really interesting. I don't know where to go with that one now. Yeah, relationships are very interesting. I mean, we've been talking about romantic relationships, but obviously the other side is like family dynamics, sort of friendships, that sort of thing as well, which is also
I think with friendships is like you meet a new friend. I mean, we've been friends 7 years, 8 years, whatever it is.
Officially my longest relationship. Success.
Queens. Yes. I forgot what I was going to say now. Friendship. So you meet someone, you know, a new friend, and because we're ADHD, it's all shiny and it's all new and it's all exciting, and you're going to be my best friend and we're going to go out every day and we're going to talk every hour, and then 3 weeks later you're like, bye then.
So
what's that about?
It is true, and it's really difficult as well, because I'm like that as well. I can be really intense if I meet someone and I connect with them, like, you know, a new friend, and then that can change. Yeah, and it's weird, and it's kind of like I don't really. Yeah.
No offense to any of the friends that are left, but
yeah. But then also, I feel like I have certain expectations on friends as well, and when that's not met, that can hurt a lot, you know, especially if you've had friends that have been around for part of your journey, or from, you know, things that might have happened to you, and then suddenly they choose not to be around. That it's like a breakup, isn't it? It's like, hang on a minute, where have you got? You're ghosted by friends. We get ghosted by everyone.
But then I think, do you know what? 99% of my friends are either diagnosed or undiagnosed, because they're the only people I can get on with. Yeah, I don't speak to them for months at a time. We don't sometimes, me and you don't communicate sometimes for weeks and weeks, and then all of a sudden we ring each other up crying like, oh.
I allow myself to be vulnerable with you, Jo.
I'm so lucky.
But I think that's really important, isn't it? Because if you have neurodiverse friends, then that kind of, the anxiety, the misconceptions around that kind of goes. You can, I mean, we've spoken many times about stuff when we've had like weird situations, and you almost process it, don't you? Like, but well, I'm a verbal processor anyway, so we have to talk it through. And it's like, it's not necessarily like I'm looking for an answer from you, but the fact that I'm able to do that with you, do you know what I mean? Whereas maybe some of my friends that aren't neurodiverse, I mean, would try and give me advice. And sometimes you don't need advice. You just need to be heard. so you can deal with it. Does that make
sense? Yeah, and it's advice from a neurotypical person is going to be advice that you don't want to hear.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Yeah. Especially
get rid, blah, 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 blah. It's no gone.
Yeah, it's never that straightforward, is it?
No.
Never that straightforward. It is quite interesting though. I've got a group of friends that I've been friends with, I don't even know how long. And then I've got a set of neurodiverse friends. We're always just sort of stay with each other. And that's it. So a fairly small circle, I'd say, but that's all you need.
I think Aoife's just actually hit the nail on the head where she said there's less pressure and more understanding with neurodiverse friends, so you can fully be yourself. And that's so important. Like, even in a relationship, that you don't have to mask. Do you know what I mean? You can just be you, and no one, that person you're in a relationship, situate, whatever ship you're in.
Entanglement. That's my new favourite word.
A what?
An entanglement. That's Jada, what's her name?
Oh,
Pinkett.
Yeah. Plunkett, whatever name is. Yeah. Yeah. No, it is. It's about not masking, you know, because masking is so draining, and we have to do it 24/7 so that we don't come across as different. Why can't we come across as different? Why? Because we're an older woman. Well, I am. Why can't we come across? Why can't I just be me? Why can't I just, I don't know, pretend to be Batman around a theme park? Do you know what I mean? Why can't I do that?
I know. No, I absolutely get it. And I think the fact that my son is also neurodiverse really helps, because it's just me and him, and we're loons. You know, this morning, 8:30, we were dancing around to some 80s music, had Rick Astley on. He was loving life. But if you had, other people would find that really strange. But that's like, we were regulating, we were sort of dealing with that situation. But I've got to the point where I'm not okay with masking anymore, and I don't really care if people find it strange. And I think that's, again, it's something that we shouldn't. So the last person that I was dating, so upfront about having ADHD, and I think that that's where I'm going. I've never done that before though, so it was an interesting one. And I felt maybe a bit of shame, I don't know, or like, oh, they're not going to understand. They're just going to think that I'm, you know, going to be this crazy person. With all fairness, probably right, but
yeah, but I'm just, do you know what I mean? Like, I'm nearly 47, and I just think, do you know what? I've come to a time in my life that I've walked away from 27 years of abuse, and I've had to mask everything, and I've had to pretend to be someone that I'm not, and I'm tired of it, and I'm exhausted, and I just think, do you know what? I haven't walked away from that to then mask again. I'm just going to be me, and if nobody likes it, or if a person doesn't like it, or whatever, that's not my problem.
Yeah, that's it. Richard's just put a really interesting comment here. So, get neurodiverse people together, and usually it's very easy to talk or work together. But I think that's absolutely true.
Yeah,
it is true. And I don't know. And I obviously, working with children and young people, I also find that, you know, this idea of how to socialize, which I just find bizarre, that there seems to be some sort of formula for what effective socialization is. I've seen kids and young people do that when there's a shared interest, and it's like, you know, they might play together, and then one decides not to, and there's no sort of drama around that. They'll just sort of go off and do something else. And I love that idea. And I think we're quite similar.
Though.
Yeah.
Just in the middle of Peckham. I need to go home.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.
I know I've got a friend that does that as well. When we go out, she just hits a point and she's ready to go, and that's it. And I absolutely know that. And when everyone's like, oh, you know, try and stay out, and that, no, I'm like, no, she's reached her level. She wants to go. She knows what she's doing. So it's
I need to go out with people that, you know, we've said it before, like, we could go out quite easily. I could mess around in, you know, if we went out, I can mess around, you can mess around, but no one's going to bat an eyelid. It's just the way the evening goes, and it's just the fun of the evening. I just don't like going out with neurotypical people, and that's no offense to neurotypical people, but once I've got a drink inside me, I just want to be me.
Yeah. The filter's off. That's
gone.
it. Yeah.
That's gone.
I know. But I think also that is a great thing about being ADHD as well, is the fact that we've got this innate ability to be so much fun, you know, because we look at things differently. And I think that's quite exciting for some people. So if you do find the right partner who, I don't know, is either neurodiverse or neurotypical, I don't know, but enjoys that, it can be quite like thrilling to be around someone that just says what they want to say.
Yeah, and I think I don't like this sort of aspect of when you look up about ADHD in relationships, it's like, oh, well, it's a neurotypical person, neurodiverse person that are together. You can't have two neurodiverse people together because it doesn't work. What? Who says that? Who makes up?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I've seen that as well. Like I said, what I was reading yesterday, it was all very, very negative. And it was kind of like saying to the the assumed neurotypical partner is, this is what you're going to have to endure. This is your toolkit to survival of having a relationship with somebody that is neurodiverse or somebody with ADHD.
Yeah.
And I just found that so insulting. And it was just article after article with the same sort of mindset. And I just think that that gives such an unrealistic sort of idea or image, because we both have ADHD, but we could deal with situations differently. Do you know what I mean? So it really is down to the individual as well. But we have lots to offer as well. Not just, all right, yeah, I forget my keys sometimes and I lose my bank card. But is that really the end of the world? No, it's not. So,
but also someone who's going to, you know, nurture you and celebrate your achievements and just walk the path with you. Do you know what I mean? But not treat you like a child.
yeah.
Like, oh, have you got your keys? Have you got your phone? Have you got your bank card? I'm not a kid. That's where I think the arguments come into it, is where the other half the neurotypical other half will treat the neurodiverse other half like they're 2 years old, they're a child. I'm on a line.
Yeah, that's what I was reading a lot as well about. You may feel, so the neurotypical partner might feel like they're parenting them, and it was all, it just wasn't very helpful, really.
Yeah, like when you were saying about Noah, like when me and Archie go out, like when we were at Chessington last night, and you know, standing under the snow machine, just getting absolutely, he's like, Mum, please, come on. And I'm like, no, it's snowing.
I'm loving it. I know.
Oh, I do like the yellow brick road and dance like Dorothy going up the path in front of everyone. And he's just like, just stop, please, just stop.
It's so funny, isn't it? Because Noah's often to me like, Mum, you are like a child sometimes. And I was like, I'm sorry, shall I be boring? He was like, no, I love it.
Yeah.
Because I can also relate to some of his difficulties as well, so we can kind of unpack it together. That's the thing. There's this misconception that we're not aware of where we struggle. We know ourselves. That's why we're quite upfront. Because
I like that, Richard. Someone should develop a take it or leave it neurodiversity dating app.
Well, Richard, off you go.
No, it's my idea.
Oh, right. That would be great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, we've got another comment as well from Basil. There's a huge diversity within the neurodiverse population. Of course, yeah. No, absolutely understand. For the purpose of this discussion, we are talking about ADHD mainly. But again, acknowledge the fact that everyone with an ADHD diagnosis is going to deal with different situations, or different areas might impact them. So, you know, because of the misconceptions out there, the belief is that we're quite childlike, you know, and I said that both Archie and Noah, they enjoy that part of us because we can just lose all our inhibitions and enjoy life. We're also successful women. We're, you know, educated, run businesses, run a household, raised our children alone. So it is quite demeaning when you are treated like a child because of something that just from an external point of view might look a little bit odd. But no apologies for that. We are just who we are, aren't we? I mean, yeah, what can you do? What else? Richard has also said a mental health issue which also have to be accommodated for. Absolutely. And I think we know things cross over quite a lot, so there's a higher likelihood of mental health issues there as well, and it could be contributed to things such as we were talking about trauma earlier on, past experiences, or actually just anxiety and issues to do with how you regulate or deal with certain situations. I don't know about you, Joe, but when I get if I get ghosted, or if I have that situation where I'm feeling rejected, that can cause the worst anxiety. And it's awful. It's like down in the pit of your stomach. Oh, Joe's gone. I think Joe's reception's run out for a minute. So I'll just continue to talk about anxiety. Okay, Aoife. There's almost an element of surprise when you tell people that you're successful as an ADHD. Completely agree. That is so, so true. So again, it's about those misconceptions and this idea that you are vulnerable if you've got ADHD, or you're childlike or can't cope with the day-to-day world. Certainly elements are going to be more difficult because of that diagnosis. The world is not made really for neurodiverse people. But when I've told people what I've done and what I do, I have had like, oh, really? That's great. Oh, how have you done that? But I think, again, for me personally, and it's not going to be the same for everyone, it's that hyper focus and drive. And it's the same in relationships. If you're involved in a relationship where you think that there is something worth sort of being involved in, then you're going to give it your all, and you may even hyper focus on that. But that is when you do also open yourself up to being, disappointed as well. So yeah, it's interesting. Oh, yeah, exactly, Aoife. How do you cope? Yeah, often get that one. Well, I take medication and I have spent time getting to understand myself. And I think that's the key. It's the needs Joe was talking about earlier on, that sort of needs assessment. You have to have your needs met. And I think once you understand what that is, and also feel unapologetic for that, because that is what you need, then it becomes a lot easier to do. I'm going to try and get Jo back in the room. I think her reception is probably dropped. Bear with me. Yep, her internet has dropped out. So we've had a cat throw up on the side, and now we've got no internet. So this is going swimmingly. Where's Richard? We are often successful in non-traditional ways. Yes, absolutely. Running your own business, doing physical jobs, sports person, acts like, yeah, creative. Something that is creative and you create your own rules for, I think, is definitely what I've noticed about myself, is I tend to thrive in environments where I create my own boundaries and I'm left with the room to sort of go with it. There's no boundaries for what that looks like. I think that's definitely been a feature of my success. And the traditional ways, education, working for other people, didn't work for me at all. So I've had to be in an environment where I have the freedom to do that. Aoife says, people always ask me that question and I feel like I need to school them on ADHD. Ask you how do you cope? I mean, I don't know about other people, but it can be extremely draining to have to explain things to other people. Sometimes I have room for it and sometimes I don't. I mean, I do believe in gentle education. So if people say something that might be, offensive or a misconception, it's a great opportunity to actually educate them gently and be like, well, actually, that's not a true reflection. And this is what it means for me as an individual. I think we need to take the time to do that, particularly when we're talking about having relationships in lots of different ways, whether it is friendships, whether it's romantic relationships or working partnerships. You've got to be able to actually have those constructive conversations and not get offended all the time, because we would just constantly be angry and disappointed, I feel. But please do tell me if you don't agree with that, because it might not be a true reflection. Hey, Joe, she's back.
I'm having a nightmare.
Loving technology today. I was just talking about jobs and working for people, and how it's often that people with ADHD are quite creative and caring, and they do end up working for themselves or go the non-traditional routes. And Richard was just also explaining that. I was also saying that what is really important, because sometimes it can be quite draining having to explain ADHD to so many people, is giving that room to gently educate people if they make misconceptions. Otherwise, we'd just be a ball of anger all the time. And I did find that I was like that for a long time. And then I was like, you know what, this is an opportunity. No, that's not what it looks like. No, that's not what it means for me. So do you struggle with that?
Oh, a hell of a lot. Like, just trying to explain to someone. I think as soon as you mention the word ADHD, I get raised eyebrows, or do you know what I mean? Just tutting, like, oh, really? You don't look like an 8-year-old little boy. Funny that.
I know. But I'm so much fun.
But I'm fun.
I'm fun. I'm good, you know? Whatever. There's so many successful people with ADHD, and I know we wheel this out all the time, and Richard just said exactly the same about gently, education. You look at successful ADHDers, and we have to use that as an example. But sometimes I also feel like it's searching for validation. So I'm kind of at this point where I'm like, I don't want to seem like I'm just constantly trying to validate myself as an ADHDer, So it really depends on where you're at in that conversation or in that relationship, whether or not you want to bother, really.
But yeah, I think it's important. I don't know, it's a bit of hit and miss, isn't it? Whether you tell the person on your initial date or meeting or whatever, do you actually tell them that you're ADHD, or are you making yourself vulnerable by doing that?
Yeah, that's it. Exactly. It's deciding. So the last date I went on, I just ended up going on a tangent about it. And I started talking about rejection sensitivity disorder. And I was just like, afterwards, what? Why did you mention that straight away? Like, don't reject me, because I'll really struggle with it.
I know. It's hard. Like, just trying to find that. Okay, maybe not on the first date or whatever, but it needs to be said, because that person needs to understand why you are like you are.
Yeah, I definitely think that it's important. I go with the moment and choose whether I think that's going to be okay. I mean, I would say within the first sort of 10 minutes, I know if I like someone, and that's it. But the problem with that is either all in or nothing. And that's the difficulty, isn't it? Because obviously you want it to be reciprocal, and the way that you see it isn't necessarily going to be the same. Yeah.
Oh, we're definitely that. I think we're, like you were saying earlier, we can only put up with so much, and then we're going to cut someone off completely. And it won't be a nice way to cut them off. It's not going to go, I'm going to go quietly. We always have to have the last word.
Oh my gosh, that is so true. It is. I feel like it's almost like getting your power back, So I just want to have the last comment here, because I need to really do this. And then that could go on for a couple of days. Don't you answer me back?
Yeah. And then you're like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. Oh, maybe that was a bit hard. But we do it anyway.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Actually, I have to say, only really recently I've just said what I wanted to say. And I remember that. And again, this is friendships as well, not just romantic relationships. I remember texting friends or something like that, and then not getting a text back immediately, and then being like, oh my God, did they take that bad? I don't understand. What did I say? What was
That's
this?
it. They don't want to talk to me anymore.
Yeah,
that's it.
You've cut them out. You're done. I never want to see you again. And then it's like, sorry, I was at work. You're like, oh, I've just completely. Yeah, I think that's something that I still struggle with that. Even with my friends, and my friends are so patient, bless them. But I do, yeah. It's the RSD, isn't it? And I think Aoife's mentioned that again. Yeah, educating people about it. Again, so many people don't know about this, and I think for me, it's a major feature of my ADHD. And I know that you also feel the same. And I wasn't aware of it at all. Even when I got my diagnosis, and I've been working in the field with Sen for such a long time as well. This wasn't something I knew about, but it makes so much sense. And that's what it is. Sorry, Joe, you went quiet. Richard's also said it's important that us ADHDers take opportunities to re-educate people gently. There aren't many other opportunities for them to find out. Absolutely. And I think that goes with what I was just saying about RSD. We have to use those opportunities when we get them, really. Aoife has said, I tend to catastrophize and start thinking the worst when then it's something rational. Yeah. Again, just relationships in general. I really do catastrophize.
Oh, I catastrophize.
It's a journey. It's bizarre how quickly you can go from like 0, though, isn't it, to like 100, where it's like it's a bit of an issue, it's a major issue. Now that's it. You can make all sorts of situations and scenarios.
But I think though, if you do get into a relationship, or I think it is important not so much to focus on the ADHD, but about the rejection.
Yeah,
because it hurts and it makes you angry and say stupid things that you're not supposed to be saying. And
yeah, I mean, I've already said it, but I do feel like it's the worst part for me is that I talk about being resilient, and we certainly are, and strong and able to do lots of different things. But that still seems to hit the same when you feel like it's a rejection. And it's gut-wrenching. It's awful.
It is horrible because you think, well, what's wrong with me? We're then going back into shame.
Yeah.
And I think so much of ADHD, especially in women, does centre around shame.
Yeah, absolutely. And just looking at the information that's out there where it's solely focused on deficits or, things we can't do. And I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that it's not important to actually think about the dark reality of some of those things, because it absolutely is. But it also feeds into that misconception. So you do start, there will be times where you feel broken or less of a person. And then there will be times where you feel absolutely great because there's a million things that we can do that other people wouldn't do or wouldn't think of. But it's a hard balance, isn't it? And I think with emotional regulation, difficulties with emotional regulation, you can go from one extreme to the next in such a short period of time. It's absolutely like draining.
Yeah.
And Richard's just said, it needs other people to understand our extreme reactions to situations. Exactly. And not say told you so when it turns out to be fine. Absolutely. That's so damaging anyway, when you think about mental health just as an overall for people. I don't know why people do that.
But it does affect it. Richard's right. It does. That part of rejection hits so hard. Do you know what I mean? To the core, that it does affect your mental health, and it does bring you down, because you think, well, what's wrong with me then? Why? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, completely. Oh, it's an interesting one, but I'm sure it's something that we'll come back to. So we're going to break for Christmas, and the next live stream is going to be on the 7th of January. I'll quickly take Aoife's last question before we go. I also feel that RSD and shame play a part daily, even if you're aware that it's just those nasty parts of ADHD. Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree.
Well, I've nearly finished my talk for you lot on shame.
Yeah. There are going to be so many things that we're going to come back to, but if you would like to request a talk on anything specific, I think we are going to go more into mental health and trauma as well, because there's so much to unpick. But I'd like to thank you all for watching and taking part. I hope that this was useful. We just enjoy talking, so happy to do it again. Thank you all, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.